Good day, welcome to Great White Retro. I'm Gord Fessick, this is my wife's cat Tai Tai, and our topic today is this Apple IIc. We picked it up last spring, and we're going to give it a quick clean. It's otherwise working, but I picked up the shell of another Apple IIc, where I'm going to make the attempt to do an experiment that David Murray talked about for his 2C Plus. Let's get her done. The Apple IIc was the winner of a recent poll that I posted on YouTube, and well, I'm going to see if I can give you guys what you want. This 2C I picked up last spring, or rather spring 2022. I picked it up alongside a TI-99/4A along with this monitor, and it was in remarkable shape for what it was. Let's give it a try right now. Let's make sure that it's still behaving. Might be my imagination, but I think this... Oh, it would help if I plugged in the cable for that, huh? Let me get that. I do believe a video cable would help immensely. Although... Oh, here we go. Oh, here we go. There we go. Apple IIc, check this drive. And well, what else am I gonna check it with but a copy of Attack of the Petsky Robots? The 2C is a very complete computer. You have pretty much everything you'd want in a desktop Apple IIe. At one point this little monitor was giving me trouble, but it seems to be okay now. There's only a couple of things missing on a 2C, and I'll describe those shortly. Lack of a decent sound card is one of those things. Alright. I would have preferred to get the Mockingboard 4C for this ready for this, but the Mockingboard 4C costs twice as much as I paid for this 2C and monitor. It was a little out of budget for right now, and chances are by the time I can afford it, it'll have already been sold out. I actually do have the parts for a standard Apple II Mockingboard. I have all the chips. If I could find a 2C Mockingboard that would take the 2E chips, all of the inline DIP packages, then I might consider building that. I was having trouble here with Super Zaxxon or regular Zaxxon, and so I'm like, okay, let's get out the diagnostics and let's see if I can tune this joystick to behave a little bit better. I want the centers to be at 128 if I can. Right, and if I can, I may stand a chance at controlling my fighter in Zaxxon. With a little bit better tuned joystick, I actually stood a better chance. And while I still lost plenty of lives due to lack of skill, I was able to complete the fighter round, which was pretty impressive. After getting through this part, I was able to get to the boss level. Well, am I going to be able to kill this thing? I made it to the boss level. Oh, uh-oh. Or so I thought. Oh dear. Oh no, defeated by the bad disc. All in all, this kit is in very good shape. The only thing that was really wrong with this machine was that it was missing all of its case screws. Every single one of these was missing. I ordered this Apple IIc shell
which has pretty much everything except the motherboard and the floppy drive. It even has more case screws. I was doing a lot of experimentation on this, and I'm going to do some more experimentation in this episode where I'm going to Retrobright this in addition to doing the actual 2C, the working one. And I'm going to try clear coating that one.
So with any luck, we'll make this retrobrighting job last a little bit longer than just 3 or 4 years. We start by taking this Apple IIc apart. These case screws came from the 2C shell. Frustratingly, the shell cost as much as this computer did. My goodness. Anyway, it has 2 case screws in the back that resemble the clips from the Apple II and II Plus and IIe. Interesting carryover. This particular case had a bit of trouble. It's actually in 3 pieces. That back panel does come off separately, but I wanted to take it off in one piece. The shell actually had that back part fused onto the top. So that was interesting. There's actually more than one revision of the 2C case. Let's get that keyboard out of there. I want to give these keys a good clean. And then the floppy drive comes out. It's held by these 4 case screws. Then the floppy drive comes out. We'll get those plates off of the front of the floppy drive. While I was inspecting it, I found what looked like a WriteProtect tab stuck in the belt. It's a good thing I opened and inspected this. I was amazed it actually worked. Anyway, getting that out of there should make this drive a little bit safer. I thought I heard some more pieces rattling in there. Turned out that there was a back tab from the case that fell off, and it was rattling around in there, but I was able to recover that. Next come the screws for the power supply and for the motherboard. When you remove this motherboard, be careful of the volume knob and headphone jack on the bottom right. Try to get it out by that corner, and you should be able to get it out without damaging it. Finally, out comes the speaker. Let's get this RF shield and this cardboard separator out. This separator is pretty good. It's some kind of fiber, kind of plastic, something or other. It's pretty durable in any case. I get out a spadger from a new precision toolkit that I picked up. You know, if I'm not careful, not only am I going to end up emulating David Murray and Adrian Black, but Hugh Jeffries as well. Anyway, let's get the front covers off of this floppy drive. First, this upper shield has to come off, like that. And then 4 screws hold the front plate on, and those screws are precision screws. They need to sit exactly in that position for the drive to let you insert and remove discs. And that darker plastic slides into a slot on there. Now let's get all these keys off. Now, since I'm only doing maintenance on this computer, I will show you the majority of steps I did to do the clean, including a key removal montage. That key puller was the same key puller I used on the Commodore 16. It's available from eBay. Like a lot of things that I got from eBay. But I can now properly remove these keys without risk of damaging them. They don't have any springs. The key switches themselves have springs, but there was this gray kind of cover in between the keys and the actual key switches. It was ruined, it was cracked in spots, and it was torn in spots. After getting all these keys off, I pretty much tore that and threw it out. It's not required for the keyboard to operate normally. No special stabilizers on these shift keys. With these last few keys off, I'll be able to get at the spacebar. There's that membrane. It's gone. Goodbye. The spacebar didn't look like it needed retrobrighting. In fact, the keys didn't look like they needed retrobrighting, so I never bothered with this. I did, however, give them a bit of a soak in dish soap. So I put them in this container, gave everything a shake, and I let it sit for a few minutes. At least I'll feel better knowing that these keys are clean. There we go. We'll let that cook for a little while. While we're waiting for that, let's start scrubbing this case. We begin with dish soap. It turned out I didn't need to use very much alcohol on here. The sponge and some dish soap was enough to clean the majority of the blemishes and marks off of this case. That Apple logo snaps out from the bottom. There is a hole where you can stick a small screwdriver to kick it out if you think you need to. That label, though, I was a little worried about that label possibly coming off during the Retrobright. But I thought, okay, let's see what happens. And I give some attention to these rubber feet. I'm hoping I don't have to replace the feet. I give the inside a bit of a scrub because there was some discoloration in there. And I went in there with a stiff vinyl brush to get into the vents and into all of the cubbies where I couldn't get my fingers in there. And there we go, all done. Let's get this disk drive plate. This was also pretty simple with my vinyl brush and dish soap. I used a bit of alcohol to get that former label off of the front of the disc release catch. There was one of these on the Apple IIe drives as well, and well, if there was any text on there, it's not readable anymore, so that might as well just come off. A little bit of alcohol and scrubbing got that label residue off. Finally, let's do the baking soda. I repeat this process as well with the extra shell that I got. The baking soda was able to remove any remaining scuffs. The only thing is I had to make sure that I scrubbed the baking soda out of those air vents and any place else that I couldn't get the sponge into. Now we come downstairs to the Retrobright tank. I put the case back together to put in the tank. I've got some hot water in there. It was about 51 C or about 131 F, so that's not bad. It's plenty warm enough for what I'm going to be doing with my 35% hydrogen peroxide and 100-watt UV lights. There we go. I go easy on the peroxide. This case is not really badly yellowed. It's more of an aesthetic thing, so I go easy on the peroxide here. And I come down here every hour to shift the case around. Look at the rubber gloves. Use those. Get them if you don't already have them. While that was going on, I started paying attention to the keyboard, scrubbing these keys. Just using a dishcloth, wiping them off. Only a couple of keys had some stubborn marks on them, but I was able to rub them away with the dishcloth. These looked pretty good. I couldn't tell the difference from the top side versus the underside. Even the spacebar looked right. After I was done with that, I just gave the keyboard itself a bit of a brush and compressed air to get any dust off of there. Now I can begin reinserting all the keys. I'm using some compressed air to get any remaining moisture off of these keys as I put them in. Some of them felt a little stuck as I was putting them back in, but they worked themselves loose. Almost done, just some finishing touches. closed Apple key, the open Apple key. And there we go. A good match for the photograph I took earlier. Now, 3 hours later, let's come downstairs to the Retrobright tank. It looks really good from down here. Alongside of the 2C shell, yeah, I'd say that case is done. It's time to put this thing back together. While that was going on, I left the shell to continue the retrobrighting process. Let's get some service on this floppy drive. I lubricate the rails with a little bit of lithium grease, and I clean the drive head with some alcohol. Alright, so alcohol swab, and then a dry swab to dab off any alcohol that was left behind. Next, let's get that front cover on there. This has to be done properly, or the disc will not let you insert it properly. I may need to revisit the drives on the Apple IIe to make sure that I got this right. But here, I try inserting a disc and it gets stuck partway through. That's because the clamp isn't holding right. Okay, I got it for now. It is very sensitive. These are precision fit. I gotta get those two right, but for some reason, one of my screws is missing. I ended up having to fasten the bottom one to get it lined up right. Otherwise, what was happening was that the clamp that spins the disc was sitting too low, and it wouldn't let me insert the disc. But now, it lets me insert it just fine, and eject it. So, time to resume putting this thing back together. My missing disk drive screw was right there, attached to the speaker on the magnet. Once I realized what was going on, I recovered the screw and I reattached it to the floppy drive. I had to expand out these clamps that were holding the speaker in place. After doing that, the speaker fit properly and I was able to recompress those clamps into place. Next comes the RF shield and the separator that goes between the RF shield and the motherboard. I was trying to explain earlier that the 2C is a very complete 8-bit Apple. If you want to get into an Apple II computer, try to find a 2C. It has serial ports already on it for copying software from a normal PC. So you can use ADT Pro to copy software to disk images. All you need is the computer, a serial cable that can go to your PC, and the ADT Pro software, which is no charge. There, I'm fitting that microphone, a headphone jack in there. Once it's in there, then the motherboard sits in the case correctly. And now we'll get a zillion case screws to fasten it back into place. Every time I go back into my container looking for extra screws, I would find one and then I would find the hole that it goes into. Other things this 2C has, a built-in 80 column card. It's got the built-in floppy, obviously. It's got 128K of RAM, which will run the majority of legacy Apple II software. Now, I made a mistake here. I tried putting the floppy drive back in first. But that didn't quite work out because I couldn't fit the keyboard in. You'll see me struggling with the keyboard in a bit. But you may have noticed a little notch in the steel case for the floppy drive. I didn't realize this until later when I tried putting the keyboard back in. But yeah, let's put those tabs back in. Those are the same kind of clips that you'll find on an Apple II case that'll give something for a screw to fasten onto. So I'll put those in there, and then we'll be able to get 2 of the case screws attached. We'll come back to that in a bit. So, keyboard next, but I had to take the floppy drive back out and then put it back in, because there's this one spot where the keyboard has to slide into the floppy drive cage. I'll point it out in a moment. Here comes the floppy drive, and right there. Yep, so make sure you get that lined up, and then your keyboard and floppy drive will fit correctly. After that, I got everything hooked back up. Finally, I can put the top half of the case back together, and then I can secure it into place. This particular case style required me to go from the back to front. And after that, I could get those back case screws in, the floppy drive screws in, and the remaining case screws. And there we go. One nice, cleaned up Apple IIc, ready for our shows later this month. Here's a before shot where it's somewhat yellowed, and the after shot where it's a little brighter, and definitely a lot cleaner. Here's me checking out all the keys. They look good so far, and even though you don't hear it, the Control-G does do a beep. Now, about that experiment I talked about at the beginning of the video. This is a can of Rust-Oleum clear coat. It's supposed to be good for plastics, but I'm supposed to use 3 coats on plastic. And to make sure I know what this is for, I wrote on there with using some Sharpie beforehand. Now, while I was at VCF Midwest, I had the bottom of my VIC-20 signed by a whole bunch of YouTubers. So I do the same kind of experiment here because I would like to be able to protect those signatures. So I thought, well, let's try putting the clear coat on top of the Sharpie. Let's make sure the Sharpie doesn't run. And, well, it looks pretty good. Okay, so 3 coats and about 3 hours later, this is the result. A couple of tips if you try this yourself. Wear clean rubber gloves, do dry spaces. Somewhere around here there were some hairs that got painted on. Remove any rubber feet, right? Don't make this mistake. Remove the rubber feet, clean the area around them. Remove any badges or other labels that are removable, and then get at all 4 different directions so that you're getting on the inside of the vent holes and so forth. And if you're going to do something silly, like have people sign the back of your case, or you're going to use Sharpie or whatever, do that before you apply the clear coat, which is what I did here. So now all we got to do is wait 5 years and see what happens. Well, a very productive afternoon. We got an original Apple IIc all cleaned up. And the only thing it's really missing to be the best portable Apple is some kind of sound card. With any luck, I'll be able to afford this in a couple of episodes. Until then, good day.